Okay, which one of these hasn't been done before? I mean, Spider-Man GBA, Spider-Man 2 GBA, Spider-Man PS1, Enter Electro. These people have covered all of these. Spider-Man 1 and 2, the movie games, Ultimate Spider-Man, Spider-Man 3, Web of Shadows. If only there was some obscure Spider-Man game that I could talk about. Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace on the GBA? $8? Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace is a game that helped kickstart my undying love for the most guilt-ridden hero in the business. I planned on having this out to coincide with the release of the Spider-Verse movie, but having it released at the beginning of 2019 makes a lot more sense with the impending release of Spider-Man Far From Home. I mean, man, for years I'd been joking that I wanted Mysterio in a movie, and I would have loved the human cartoon character Bruce Campbell could have played him like was the original idea in Spider-Man 4, but Jake Gyllenhaal could be great too. Anyways, I'm getting distracted, let's get it started. Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace is a superhero action game developed by Vicarious Visions and published by Activision in September 2001 for the Game Boy Advance. It's also a game I almost never hear people talking about, despite it being one of my favorite Spider-Man experiences out there. There's a lot to unpack, so let's start with the controls. Don't worry, there's not a whole lot to mention here. It's a pretty simple side-scrolling beat-em-up. A jumps, B is a punch or a kick, the directional pad moves, and the right trigger shoots out a condensed web blast. We were a whole 17 years away from web traps and web bombs and all of that, but that doesn't mean the controls are boring. There are some cool advanced moves you can do, like a very handy down kick that actually helps you get through a difficult gauntlet of spikes near the end of the game. And timing your web swings to cling to certain parts of the walls helps you get to different health or armor pickups. I feel like it also requires mentioning that the backgrounds in this game are gorgeous. It really feels like you're in each respective location and not just in front of a giant scrolling screen, which separates some of the cheaper looking GBA titles from the better looking ones. After an awesome opening cutscene where we get a glimpse at some of the villains we'll be fighting over the course of the game, MJ tells Peter she just won a goldfish at the amusement park and needs him to get her a fishbowl, which just might win the award for the most relaxed opening to any game ever. Before Peter can successfully buy a fishbowl from what I'm assuming is a 16-bit PetSmart, he hears a news report stating that there are reports of criminal activity across the New York area. Alright, now things are starting to pick up, and we can get into the roster of baddies we'll be taking down. You can practically hear Peter grumbling about the old Parker luck as you choose which area you'd like to tackle first. Downtown, Empire Metals, or Pier 54. Now, when I play Mysterio's Menace, I have a very specific order for the levels because of something I'll touch on a little later, so we'll go with that order. You start downtown, where Hammerhead and his goons are running wild in and out of the highway tunnel. This is long before Hammerhead was known for using Sable Tech to start a Maggia war, so he's pretty easy to beat. However, he's not down for the count when you've landed that final punch, and he gets away to cause you more trouble in his nightclub shortly after. Once you've taken down Hammerhead twice, you can move on to Empire Metals. In Empire Metals, you meet the most evil and terrifying Spider-Man villain of them all, Big Wheel. You heard me right, and if you haven't heard of Jackson Wheel before, here's a quick rundown. He was a businessman who, as most Spidey villains do, gets fed up with his mundane life and decides to start a life of crime. What sets him apart is his gimmick. He drives around inside a big wheel with a gun on the side. Honestly. For real. Someone please get this guy into Marvel Spider-Man 2. I'm begging you, Insomniac. So, as a surprise to no one at all, you take out Big Wheel pretty easily and move on to ChemCorp. At ChemCorp, you run into Electro after navigating a series of mazes that lead to different control consoles you must destroy. While I like the ultimate pure energy Electro, my heart will always go out to good old Max Dillon's original yellow and green costume. He really thought those bolts were a good idea, and you know what? I'm happy for him. After beating Electro, you can head on over to Pier 54. Pier 54 is a fun romp through some warehouses and a luxury cruise in the middle of two harbors that you must traverse to reach Alexei Siskovich, the Rhino. Siskovich may not be the smartest Spider-Man villain, and his boss fight is relatively easy as his attacks are very predictable, but if he hits you, it'll hurt about as much as it should. Beat him, then save him from the river to learn that ninjas are causing trouble at the museum. I'm not sure which museum he's talking about, but Spider-Man vs. ninjas? This should be great! I wonder if they'll be related to the Hand. The museum is where the game takes a bit of a difficulty curve. The ninjas are a bit harder to fight than the average enemy, and you have to remember which places you've been to, so you can successfully track down all of the stolen artifacts. Once you've collected the artifacts, one of the ninjas lets you know that Scorpion is the one behind the job. Scorpion is the second hardest boss in the game, only behind the final fight, and was actually the boss that stumped me the most when I was a kid. After getting him down to about a quarter of his health, he knocks the lighting fixture down on you, forcing you to leap up to the small platform that works as your last bit of sanctuary while he leaps around the room like a madman. While not as difficult as the first Raimi movie game's fight with Scorpion, you'll have to use a combination of your punches, kicks, and webs to take him down. Then, you learn who's really behind all this craziness that's kept you from getting MJ a fishbowl. Gee, I sure wonder who that could be. Mysterio, the big bad of the game, is holed up at an amusement park that looks straight out of the Batman Arkham series. You can practically hear Mark Hamill singing Batman show tunes behind some of the fixtures. Fighting your way through some killer clowns, skeletons, and some of the hardest jumps and swings of the entire game, you finally reach Quentin Beck himself, the marvelous and malevolent Mysterio. He's always been my favorite Spidey villain, specifically because of this game, but also because of how he's related to theatricality and filmmaking. The potential for fun stories with him are pretty much endless, and while I was joking earlier about having Big Wheel in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, I think it would be criminal to leave Mysterio out of the game. You could have him trade banter with Screwball about making videos, have him make some politically charged films directed at Norman Osborn, or just have him try to rob a convenience store and build up a whole epic fight just to have Spidey One-Punch Man him out of existence. Anyway, back to the fight. It's definitely the hardest in the game, even if you've mastered all the controls. You'll have to be primed and ready to take on this challenge. Or, if you were clever throughout, you collected the game's various power-ups, in which case taking on Mysterio is a cakewalk. Bam! That's how you do a transition. One of the coolest things about this game is that there's a fair deal of replay value for a licensed GBA title, and that replay value can be found in the power-ups located throughout each level. These power-ups range from rudimentary or simple upgrades like more web cartridges to store your webbing in, but others are really helpful like the electric suit, which helps you get through areas with exposed wires without taking much damage. While the other suits don't give any cosmetic differences, the final upgrade does. The symbiote suit may be a little overdone today, but in 2001 it blew my mind to get through that really hard gauntlet in the amusement park level and unlock the symbiote suit to help you defeat Mysterio. The reason I presented the levels in the order that I did is because that will help you get each upgrade without having to double back and replay a level once you have the appropriate upgrade. Now, I have a theory about this game's connection to another famous Spider-Man multimedia series, the PS1 games. When doing some research, I found that Mysterio's Menace is supposed to be a spiritual successor to a Game Boy Color game called Spider-Man 2: The Sinister Six from a few years earlier. Apparently they have similar controls, but everything points to Mysterio's Menace being a spiritual successor to the PS1 games instead, to me. I mean, just look at Peter and MJ. They look like fully realized versions of those PS1 sprites. Even Rhino's in-game model looks a bit like his PS1 build, and so does Scorpion with that splash of blue and green. When it takes place in the timeline could be debated, although I like to think that this is just a moderately rough night after the events of Enter Electro. And maybe nothing too horrible ever happened to Peter in this universe. I mean, the end of those games and even this one are pretty light fare compared to... Oh no... Yeah, so a funny story about Mysterio's Menace. I actually sold it in 5th or 6th grade to buy a copy of Brawl back when that came out on Wii, and it's always kind of haunted me that I sold this because this was one of my favorite games. Then I found this secondhand gaming store near my house, and I started going there. I found this. I found a lot of other really weird stuff that I'd like to talk about in the future. And that was kind of my inspiration to make this video. But my other inspiration is a lot of the YouTubers that I've been watching. Godzilla Mendoza, Xavier, I think his name is, Diego Rivera, and Chris Baker. All their videos are awesome. Xavier has his Spider-Man retrospective, which is incredible. Diego's got his Pocket Heroes series. Check both of those out. Those are what inspired me to make this video and hopefully turn this into an ongoing series. So yeah, thanks for watching. You can see me on mine and my girlfriend's vlogging channel, Maddie and Brandon, and Spelled Out. You can see her doing awesome fashion vlogs on her channel, Official Madeline Rose. I will try to have a new video like this one up in the next 2 weeks about another weird, obscure Game Boy game that I found. Like if you liked this video, comment below if you remember Mysterio's Menace or remember any other weird game that you want me to talk about or look at, and subscribe to see more. Yeah. See you real soon. I'm sad now. Now I have to put this in there.